Hey YouTube, welcome back to the channel. Donnie here. Today is the second part of the video that I started earlier on the Music City Autograph Show. So I showed the autographs already, but now I'm going to show some pickups I made from that show, but also some other LCS shops here in the local area and from my wife and my trip to the Memphis area a couple weekends ago for our anniversary. So we went there, go antiquing, and just have some time away from kids and dogs and everything else. And so went back to Memphis where we grew up. Got to go to a Memphis Redbirds baseball game. They're the AAA affiliate for the St. Louis Cardinals on that Friday night. So went to the game. It was not very busy at all in the stands. It was maybe 10 or 15% full, I would say. But we got good seats kind of on the mezzanine level, front row. But the game was not very good for the Redbirds. The very first play, very first pitch, in fact, of the game, the visiting team, I think from St. Paul, hit this moonshot like right in the infield, like straight up. And the pitcher, the second baseman, and the first baseman were all standing there looking up, and all three of them lost it, so the ball dropped right in between all three of them. Very first pitch of the game. So that kind of told the story for the rest of the game for the Redbirds. I think the visiting team scored like 4 or 5 runs that first inning, and it just went downhill from there. So, but it was still fun going to the game. I hadn't been there to a Redbirds game in a long time, so that was fun. So we got to spend the weekend there. Went to some antique shops, went to a card shop that I'll show some pickups on or from here in a little bit. Got to eat some good food, including some Memphis barbecue from the commissary in Germantown, Tennessee, and a few other kind of local restaurants that we grew up eating at that are still around, so that was all good. So anyway, I want to turn the camera around now and start showing you some cards, so stay tuned. Okay guys, let's go over some cards from the last several weeks. Most of these come from various local card shops. The first little group here came from a card store. Actually, I guess it was more of a hobby store because it had some sports cards, but it also had Pokemon and Funko Pops and gaming stuff and you name it, kind of that kind of a store. And so when I first went in there, this was in Tupelo, Mississippi. When I first went in there was only 2 sports like vintage baseball cards in the showcase, and so I was like, man, this is going to be kind of a bust. But asked the owner if he had any more vintage baseball hidden anywhere, and he went behind the counter and pulled out a box and said he had gotten a lot of these in recently. He hadn't been through them all yet, and some of them he was going to keep, but some he'd be willing to sell, so I could look through them and see what I found. So that's what I did. So this shop in Tupelo, I hit it up because I was at on a work trip there for a couple nights. My company has a facility there in Tupelo, Mississippi. So on the way into town, I got there about 30 minutes early and stopped in, spent about 30 minutes there at the shop. But so I looked through this stuff, found some 70s, as well as some vintage football that I picked up. So I'll go over those now. So first up is this 1976 Mike Schmidt card. So I have Schmidt's rookie card and a few other of his like 80s cards and that kind of stuff, but I don't really have that many 1970s Mike Schmidt cards. So I picked that one up. I thought that was pretty nice shape. There's the back. So this was just a few bucks. So I think I spent like $40 total at this Tupelo store. Next one up is 1975 Frank Robinson. So I needed this for my 1975 top set build. And of course the Frank Robinson Hall of Fame player run. So it's got a little wear there on the top corners and stuff, but it'll certainly work for my set until I maybe upgrade it later on. So that was about $5 for that one. And then a couple of or a few 1970 tops here also. to fill in holes for my 1970 top set build. So first up, Brooks Robinson. Little OC, but still a pretty nice card. $5 on that one. And then Harmon Killebrew. Getting a little bit of corner wear, but that'll fit my 1970 top set pretty well, I think. Look at all those stats in the back for Harmon Killebrew there. So he had 446 home runs at that point in his career. That was pretty nice. Then the Johnny Bench All-Star card from 1970 Topps. Other than being OC, this one's pretty nice. See OC on the back too, but sharp corners and borders. So 3 ads for my 1970 top set build. And then he did have some vintage football in there. And so I picked up 3 vintage football cards, and I honestly, I'm not super familiar with the vintage football sets yet, so you'll have to forgive me there if I get the years wrong and stuff. And this first one, actually, I think it's a 1960, but I'm not 100% sure. But it's Y.A. Tittle. So I don't think I had any Y.A. Tittles in my collection to date, so this was the first one for him. I want to pick up some of his 50s cards. They're pretty sweet looking. But I found that was just a few bucks. Put him back there on one of the stands. And then also picked up this 1973 Johnny Unitas, so towards the end of his career. Johnny Unitas has so many cards that his facial expression is just absolutely ridiculous. So this is one of the few that is somewhat tolerable. There's the Johnny Unitas. And then also I found this Gale Sayers card. I think it's maybe like 1970 something Topps game card. So it's kind of like the 1968 baseball Topps game cards, but it's for football. And it's in the 70s, 71, 72, 73, somewhere around there, I think. So I thought that was pretty neat. So I'm not a big football card collector at all, but I am trying to pick up, you know, a little bit of vintage football here and there when I see something that kind of catches my eye that's affordable. So those were the pickups from the Tupelo card shop. And then, let's see, I guess a couple weekends ago, it was my wife and my 22nd anniversary, wedding anniversary. And so we did like a little weekend trip back to the Memphis area where we both grew up and graduated from high school together. And so we were going to go antiquing. We went to the Sheffield Antique Mall in Collierville, Tennessee there. Huge antique mall. Pretty nice. Picked up a few things there. Went to a large yard sale in the neighborhood I used to live out in Cordova. That was kind of hit or miss. Didn't find a whole lot there. But we did find another antique store there in the Bartlett and Raleigh area that was pretty good. We picked up a lot of stuff, or my wife picked up a lot of stuff from there for her. But kind of in the middle there of hitting up everything antique-wise, there's a card shop called Triple Crown Sports Cards in Germantown, Tennessee. And I've been to that shop a couple times before, but I hadn't been there in quite a while. So I stopped in there and picked up a few cards. One was the Dwight Gooden rookie card that I showed in my last video that I got autographed at the Music City Autograph Show. But I also picked up a couple other cards, including this Richie Ashburn 1956 Topps. So this was on my upgrade list for my Richie Ashburn run. This is in pretty nice shape. I think it was like 40 bucks, something like that. But I'll show you the one I had previously in my collection. Here on the right, this is my old one, this is my new one. So you can see the new one is definitely an upgrade. Much better corners and edges, color, centering's better in my opinion. They're both graybacks. So this, my old version will probably go into my dupes box as trade bait. So if anybody's looking for a 56 tops Richie Ashburn in this kind of condition, let me know. Maybe we can work out a trade. But I was happy to pick up this kind of an upgrade on the Ashburn run there for 56 tops. So I'll put him back there. And the third card I picked up from the shop, he had some, actually quite a bit of pre-war Diamond Stars, Gaudis, some T206s, T205s, and so forth. And he had some ungraded T206s. And so one of them was a EPDG back that he wanted, I think like 174, and I passed on that one. I just was trying to keep the budget kind of relatively reasonable. But he did have this one. It's a Jap Barbeau, one that I didn't have in my set yet, so I needed it for that. But the main reason I got it was because it has a polar bear back, and a pretty nice polar bear back, pretty bold back there. So I prefer my T206s ungraded when I can get them. So finding this there, you know, pretty decent shape. I think it was $110 for this, so I picked that up. So I got the 56 Ashburn, the T206 Jap Barbeau, and the 84 Fleer Dwight Gooden rookie card from that Triple Crown Sports Cards in Germantown, Tennessee. So if you guys are ever in the Memphis area and out in the Germantown, Collierville area in particular, stop by Triple Crown. He has a pretty good selection of vintage cards, Golden Age, and some pre-war supplies, boxes, you know, modern stuff too. But I thought a reasonable selection of vintage stuff and reasonable prices too. So put Mr. Barbeau back there, maybe. He doesn't know what to say. There we go. Okay, and then the next ones, let's see, how do I want to do this? So this next one comes from another local card shop in Rogersville, Alabama. And one I've hit up before quite a few times. It's kind of, prices are a little bit on the high end in my opinion. He has some vintage, but it's all kind of hit or miss, just to find something that might catch your eye there. But in this particular case, he had all of his vintage cards up in like value box kind of area, which was nice for a change. A lot of times he has them out in display cases, and they're harder to get to and stuff. But he had most of them up in on the counter in boxes that you could flip through. And I found this one in there. I didn't have a card from the set yet, so this is the first example of this particular set in my collection now. It's from the 1934 to 36 Diamond Star set. And this one in particular is from 1935, it looks like. It's number 29, and it's Red Rolf. Let's see if I can get the camera to focus here. Maybe, there we go. It's a little bit better. I may have to take those cards down from the background to get it to focus better. But anyway, this was my first example of a Diamond Stars card. It was the only one he had. I probably overpaid for it a little bit, but I figured at the time to pick up a pre-war card that would serve as a tight card for me of a set that I hadn't had yet. I thought that was pretty sweet. So there's that Red Rolf. Let me look up his stats and share that with you guys for a minute. Just give me a second. Okay, going back to Red Rolf here. Played for the Yankees. Looks like he was 4-time All-Star, played in 5 World Series, a career WAR of 29, so he was a solid player. Let's see, batting average, lifetime of 289, it looks like. Almost 1,400 hits, about 500 RBIs. And let's see, played from 1931 to 1942. So 10 or 11 year career there. So solid player, not a Hall of Famer, but solid major leaguer. So anyway, I was pretty happy picking that one up as an example from this set. And when I did that, I thought this would probably be the only one for quite some time from this set that I would get. But you'll see in just a minute that that was not the case. And so there's more cool pre-war vintage cards coming up here in just a second. Okay, so fast forward a couple weeks, and I'm back at the Music City Autograph Show now. This is on this past Saturday, so what is that? Like September 27th, something like that. Walking the show floor and come across some exhibit cards, which I have a few of. I'm not a huge collector of them, but there are some nice cards in the exhibit sets. And so, as you guys probably know, I do collect Mickey Vernon because he was my dad's favorite player. So I found this Mickey Vernon batting pose from the 1947 to 66 exhibit set. It was $3. So I picked that up, adds to my Mickey Vernon run, and it's just a super cool card and pose of him. You know, these are blank back, but clean back on this one. No creases, no writing or anything. So for $3, yeah, that was kind of really easy decision there. So that was my first pickup from the Music City Autograph Show as far as cards go. So let's see, put that back there. Now the next two are kind of the real, I would say, pickups, and I'm going to go in a little bit reverse order from how I actually got them, just to kind of build the momentum here. But this dealer had just like 2 tables at the show, and he was a dealer that had Pokemon and kind of like 1980s and 90s like cartoon kind of card packs, and he had his kids there with him, and so they were kind of trying to sell some stuff. But he did have this one display case that had a bunch of pre-war vintage cards, and in particular there were some Diamond Stars and another set in there, and he probably had, I don't know, maybe a couple dozen of each of the sets. And so I got looking and talking to him, and he said these had just come into his shop. He has a shop somewhere in kind of a suburb of Nashville. Just come into his shop from a 101-year-old man who was the original owners of these. And so I'm not sure if it was the actual 101-year-old guy that was selling them or one of his family members. But anyway, the cards were originally owned by him, came out of the packs into that collector's hands, and then came to this dealer, and this was the very first time the dealer had offered them for sale to the public after he acquired them. And apparently there's more of these where they came from. But he had some Diamond Stars there, and in particular he had 3 Mickey Cochran cards. And they were all kind of, you know, I would say mid to low grade copies. All of them had a little bit different flaws. There was one that had a few creases, there was one that had some writing on it, and then there's this one that I picked up. And so if you look at it on the front here, I mean, it has some wear and stuff, but I mean, it's a really nice looking card for a Hall of Famer, Mickey Cochran. So this one goes along now with my 33 Gaudy Mickey Cochran that I have. So I have 2 Cochran cards for, you know, probably a top 10 catcher of all time, and who Mickey Mantle was named after in particular. So that's pretty cool. But you can see the little bit of flaw on this one is some of the staining on the back. Has the blue back for the Series 1 Diamond Stars from 1934. See the 34 copyright down here. But I thought it presented really well. And of the 3, the stain on the back here was the least issue in my mind for my eyes. So I was really happy to pick this up. It was $125. I actually didn't really look up comps and that kind of stuff too hard on these cards. He had some other Hall of Famers, including a Jimmy Fox that did have some writing on the top, and a few other commons and Hall of Famers, but he had 3 of these, and so I picked out this one for my set. So that was actually the second card I bought from him, and I got that from him on Sunday when I went back, because I was so excited about this first card that I picked up from him on Saturday that I wanted to, first thing in the building on Sunday, I wanted to go back and check and see what was still available, hoping that he hadn't sold out, and he hadn't. So I was able to pick up that Diamond Stars Mickey Cochran. But really what caught my eye on Saturday when I first saw the cards was he had at least a couple dozen of 1933 tattoo orbits, including some commons and some Hall of Famers. This was not the most expensive one amongst them, but I think the most expensive was like a Jimmy Fox for like $350, but he had some others that were in the, the 150, 170 kind of range, and he had some down at like $20 for some of the commons. But I saw this particular one, and I thought it was in really nice shape for its age. First time on the market from the original owner, who was 101 years old. A set that I didn't have any examples in my collection of yet, and a player, Hall of Fame player, that I also did not have any examples of in my collection. So I saw this Kai Kyler 1933 tattoo orbit, and I couldn't pass it up. I was so excited to pick this card up, ungraded, basically from the original owner to this show in Nashville to my hands within the matter of a few days. From what I understand, the dealer had just picked these up literally earlier in the week, and it was $100. When I was looking up these, I was trying to make sure that everything looked legit with them and stuff, and looked on eBay. There's only 2 of these for sale on eBay. One of them is I think a PSA 4 that's listed for $800, and the other one is some higher grade that's listed like $4,000. So I figured this card here, with the crease down here in the corner, bottom left corner being the major flaw on the card, would probably grade at least a 2 or 2.5, maybe a 3 or so. And if the 4 is for sale for $800, I figured this one could easily be worth $300 or so. So getting it for $100 was, I thought, a good deal. But regardless of the price, it was the fact that it was a pre-war set that I didn't have any examples of in my collection yet, and a Hall of Fame player that I didn't have any examples either. So I was very, very happy to pick that up. Here's the back. The backs are very simple. Just kind of has the name, team, date, height, weight of the player. I read that these were really thin cardstock. They're not as thin as what the article I read made it sound like. They're much thinner than like a 1933 Gaudy card, but they're much thicker than like Cracker Jacks and some of the other paper thin issues out there. So that was kind of my big pickup from this past weekend. I say big pickup, it was only $100, so price wise it's not a big pickup, but as far as my collection goes, a really good find, big pickup, super happy with it. And that kind of made the show, I got a lot of autographs at the show, so that was fun too, but this almost kind of overshadowed getting the autographs in my mind, is getting this 33 Tattoo Orbits Kai Kyler. So there you have it. With that is the last of the pickups over the last several weeks from local card shops and one Nashville card show. So added now 2 Diamond Stars cards to my collection where I didn't have any earlier in the summer. Added the Tattoo Orbit that I didn't have any of earlier in the summer, and picked up Mickey Vernon exhibit card, an upgrade to my Richie Ashburn collection, some vintage football, and a T206 Jack Barbeau with polar bear back. So not a ton of money spent, but a lot of good adds to the collection. So that's it for today, everyone. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, but most especially leave comments. I like hearing from you guys. I like responding to you. So that's the main thing. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. Talk to you guys later. Bye.